Remember?
Yeah.
Crossword.
Whenever there is not crossword, it's numbers game. Numbers game. Japanese game. A bit like Sudoku, but in interest in Sudoku. Well, you can blame me that I'm using it for entertainment. I don't understand what's so wrong about that. It is a wrong assumption to believe that the poor people are different from us. I certainly watch good TV. I don't watch films generally. Definitely not Indian or Telugu films. I don't watch news. You can accuse me of using TV for entertainment, which is for me largely for entertainment. That's the only thing that makes sense to me on television. It doesn't mean that I don't use this technology for other purposes as well. So I am not able to accept your argument. If they are not able to embrace technology as fast as a nation we deserve and we need to, it is largely because A, we have not yet made them user-friendly, but that's only one part of the story. B, we have not given them the kind of educational skills required to be able to apply that knowledge productively. And C, we have not created the other logistics and other externalities that make it worthwhile. Just because I have technology which is potentially more productive, if there is no means of converting that into an income which is meaningful to me, other infrastructure, the marketing opportunities, the price arbitrage in the society, the regulatory conditions in agriculture, for instance, elsewhere, unless other conditions are adequately met, you are saying that this is wonderful, doesn't make any difference. So the point I'm making is, don't make the victim the villain. The people who are not able to embrace these wonderful advances and benefit from them are the ones actually who are most in need of it. I am betting, and this is my lifetime's bet, that if people are given an opportunity, people always want something better for themselves and their kids. If that is not true, democracy will not work. If that's not true, human society will not work. The fundamental belief is that human beings always want something better for themselves. Forget society, country, Bharat Mata. My family, myself, I want something better. That is what propelled all human society towards this modernity. Some people call it potentially disaster, some people call it potentially heaven. That I don't know. History is yet to be written. Maybe 100 years after my death. But the point is, all human progress is because of this inner urge. That urge is universal, from your servant maid to you and I. Let us not arrogate to ourselves any superior attitudes. We have the same attitudes as these people. They just didn't have the opportunity of the kind that we are blessed with. That is the broader point I'm making. There's also another issue. Technology is relatively easy, though sometimes it takes time. It's getting compressed now. I remember still, as a kid, talking to local farmers in my village where I grew up, talking to them about fertilizers, chemical fertilizers. They all said, no, they are all bad, bakwas. And chatta koppan antundi. Telugu maatladtara ekkuva the manure heap in the every household used to have a manure heap because you have some animals, you have some agricultural land, therefore the agricultural waste comes here instead of burning it, right, like they do nowadays in the country. Then the animal waste comes here, and then it all becomes naturally fermented and becomes eventually manure that's usable. That's standard. Every house has it. It of course has the downside of mosquitoes, the other insects, the nuisance and stench and all. That's part of life. We're used to that. And for them to be told that, look, you have to apply fertilizer, let alone pesticide, chemical fertilizer, was a big thing. They all rejected it. Today we've gone so far that they apply fertilizer and pesticide so much, even when it's unworked. It takes time sometimes. Sometimes it may be generational. This was instantaneous. Mankind and Indians too embraced it pretty readily because of some unique set of circumstances, I'm sure. But there is no reason to believe that the human beings in general are averse to technology.
So, sorry to interrupt again. So how can we understand whether a green revolution has helped us a lot or it is making us to destroying, to taking us towards destroyment?
What is your thinking? What do you think?
Our thinking is to, it's for improvement and for destroyment. We are in a state not to take a...
This question is actually more germane to what we're discussing. This is what this whole central question today is about, right? What the theme at least. What do others think?
I think the objective is good, but the adaptation of that particular is badly implemented.
I strongly feel we have too many inequalities in the system.
No,
Socially,
but let's focus on this.
on this topic
Was
of,
Green Revolution good?
yes, I'm coming to
Ultimately, as destructive.
yes, sir. So historically, if you look at we in India, I think rich continues to become richer, poor continues to either become poor or continue to become further down. So I think socially, politically, culturally, rich becomes richer, poor becomes poorer. There are efforts now. I would argue with the statement that most of us have left our traditional, my fathers or forefathers, what they used to do. I quit them, I come to the education and try and make a living out of a corporate world or come to an urban world and come and pick up a job or something like that. That's because I work in a rural village, I see people working in rural village, they continue to be where they are. Little bit improvement, but significantly not. And I see a same person come to a city, try and make a career, 20 years from there, he has everything that he needs. The same person working in a rural village is not. So
What has that got to do with Green Revolution?
So I'm talking to the point that system will somewhere revolt and say we need something, in a better way, larger population. But I am of the view that it will take ages to come to that point of evolution.
Okay. Any other perspectives? Green Revolution, was it good? Was it bad? In simplest terms.
The
I
objective
think
is
it is
good.
good.
The objective is good.
It is good.
Mhm.
The
Hunger
objective is
has
definitely good.
significantly gone down, I think, sir, from.
I would say it will address the issue very quickly, but not in a long run.
Mhm.
So that could be the issue.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sir, Green Revolution was good and bad both sides. First time it introduced genetically modified crops which increased the yield of our products, but at the same time it destroyed the diversity in the crops which was preventing. So naturally, if in one part of the country, if one crop is affected by some disease or some insect, at the same time we are having a larger implication of that infestation, insect infestation. So that's what it destroyed the diversity, but it gave us the yield. So, and naturally the thing is, for example, Assam has a very wet kind of a climate, so it gets large amount of rainfalls. So, for example, there was a kind of a rice which was able to withstand floods and everything. But through green evolution, we have destroyed the diversity and we have come up upon a single type of crop. So now what happens due to global warming? For example, we are getting lots of rains in the country. So now our crops are not able to cope up with the rains which we are facing here. So if the diverse type of rice which was there in Assam would have been preserved, then we could have used that. But since we have very less types of crops, for example, rice has very less types of varieties in the country left after the Green Revolution. So that's why we are facing large scale implication of these floods and disasters which we are facing in the country.
Anybody else? Come on, many of you must have come from farm background, right? You must have some ideas.
Green Revolution was like intended to increase the quantity, which we certainly achieved. Because this much population, we cannot cope up with like regular crops. But now, what they are thinking about quality also, because people got this, and they are going to back to old crops like jowar and everything. People are trying to consume, which goes like little up. We are going again back. So that time now organic farming is came. So like organic food they are introducing. So that is like after Green Revolution also we are keep thinking and keep changing, advancing in that way.
Sir, one more thing I would like to add is that Green Revolution, as we view it, was a single event. But what Green Revolution should be a continuous event. For example, same Green Revolution which made us a wheat exporter due to over-explosion of population or whatever may be the reason, we are now an importer of wheat. So Green Revolution has reached its saturation. So it has to be a continuous further process rather than a single event.
We are confused, aren't we? On the one hand, we are saying Green Revolution has very bad elements. On the other hand, we are saying, look, unless we continue Green Revolution, we are in trouble. I mean, see, you figure out what is it we are saying. Anyway, I am just putting a line.
It's an infinite loop. We can't decide which is correct in this point. Because one way we need it, one one way we don't need it. One way when we think of money.
You
we
know what
require-
India's total food grain production was in 1970s or 1950?
Very less.
It was 52 million tons. You know what is the total food grain storage during peak time in any given year with the government storage go downs in this country today? Forget private sector. Any idea? Just make a guess.
No, it must be 10% of the total production, or maybe less.
80 million tons. Today's storage alone during peak time, not during the whole year, but in the peak time, peak procurement time, at one time primarily wheat and rice, is 60% more than the total production in 1950.
The population has also grown. Like,
That's
time
not okay.
so-
So, how has that got to Green Revolution? Did Green Revolution tell you to increase population? let's focus on, don't find some other thing.
How would it?
Let's focus on what we're discussing. Is this good or bad? You know what was happening until 1970s when Green Revolution took place? Under Public Law 480, United States was sending ships to India. Until the ship landed in Madras port or some other port, or Mumbai port or some other port in India, and until we unloaded that and then transported to the rest of the country, there was simply no food to eat a substantial part of the time in substantial parts of the country. The nation was starved. So the choice was, let several million people die. Do you know how many people died in China between 1958 and 61? Anybody has an idea? 20 million people died in China of starvation. Between 58 and 61, that was after my birth. You know how many people, how many lives Norman Borlaug, the architect of Green Revolution globally, he was credited to having saved? 2 billion lives. The world's largest ever benefactor in human history. Now we can make a choice. Why the hell do you have 2 billion lives? If only they are all gone, maybe the population of the world would have been only 4 billion now, because 2 billion plus their children, their grandchildren. That's one perspective. I have no quarrel with that. But that's one perspective. You must figure out which perspective you want.
Don't we think we need to have a change in this green revolution? Don't we think a change?
Yeah, change is eternal. You need change everywhere. I have no quarrel. I have absolutely no quarrel. The moment I say whatever is happening is wonderful, I don't require any change, then I could accept 1950s world. I could accept 1850s world. I could accept a 1000 AD world. I could accept a 1000 BC world. So it goes without saying, right? So the point is, do we have a choice? Two, supposing you come to the conclusion that look, Green Revolution is bad, look, computers are bad, look, mobile phones are bad, or something else is bad. Is there anything, anybody in the world, from Donald Trump to Narendra Modi to Xi Jinping to, what is that man's name, Turkey's president? Erdogan to this fellow MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. I'm talking of all the proto-dictators or dictators of the world. Forget the other people, the people who want to control everything. Can they all do together anything about it? Because we are now irreversibly drawn into something. Harari, some of you might have read Harari, right? Sapiens? Anybody? Harari. He says something very interesting. Not today, the die was cast as early as about 12,000 years ago. The moment human beings went for agricultural revolution, from a hunter-gatherer stage to culturing certain carefully selected specimens of certain species of crops, which still is the same 12,000 years ago selected species that we're eating. There's nothing new mankind has done in 12,000 years. There are about 12 crops which are edible. It's the same 12 crops we're eating even today. Substantially it may be wheat and rice. The rest of them are these crops. That's nothing else. There's no new invention in that sense, new discovery of that sense. But the moment mankind went for culturing these carefully selected specimens of these 12 crops, the die was cast. For whatever reason they did, because that facilitated population growth above what would have happened for the hunter-gatherer. Once that happened, without doing further culture, hunter-gatherer's life could not have sustained this population unless you want them to die. And the rest is history. In that sense, the questions you all have, is it good or is it bad? That's a question that should have been asked about 12,000 years ago. Subsequently, at every moment of time in history, we are all simply part of that cycle, an irreversible flow, unless you are willing to let half the population of the world die in a jiffy. And if you decide so, tell me which member of your family you are willing to sacrifice before you talk about half the population of the world. Therefore, that's an unproductive question. And the second one, I'm being even more provocative. You're a banker, right?
Work for a banking client.
Okay, go for it. Let's take banking industry. Around the time you guys were born or before you were born, bankers in India, essentially bankers in India in those days were all nationalized banks. There was practically no non-nationalized bank, 99% was nationalized. They all used to go on an annual strike. Do you know what it was about?
Pay revisions. Pay revisions.
That was a minor thing. They already got the pace. There were bankers and insurance companies had the highest salaries in those days. During our younger days, the best employees in the country were the bankers and insurance companies.